Hey, what's up, man? We made it
Hey.
another week.
Yes, we did. Hey,
We
good to see you again.
we sure did. Welcome to the
Process that.
Process Tip podcast.
Process that podcast. Say
Yeah,
that three really
I know.
fast.
It's
Yeah,
where we
it's
talk
tricky.
about process and all of the things that get us all wound around the axle every
Yes,
week.
sir.
Yes,
Each and every week.
that's right.
Congratulations on 80 plus
Yep.
podcast.
We are podcast octogenarians.
Whoop, whoop.
I know. So
And going strong.
we can tell you about the good old days in podcasting. It was last year,
That's right. Way back in the day.
back in
No.
2025. All right, today's topic.
Yeah.
There's no I in team, but
I've
there
been
is a
told.
big old I in AI.
And very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Let's this is a great topic, Chris. Yeah. What is AI for teams versus what is AI for
Yeah.
I?
Yeah.
So crack into that nut. I'm always I
It,
love where your brain has been stewing.
yeah.
Walk me into it along with our listeners a little bit. How'd you get here?
So I've been thinking a lot about there's been a ton of just AI transformations. It's all the rage. I
Yeah.
mean, literally there's Micron, which is just, it's been the fastest company to go from $500 billion to $1 trillion. Their corporate headquarters is literally like a mile from my house, and there's a whole bunch of
Right.
a whole bunch of cranes that are up. They're building like crazy. So AI is all the rage, right? Data centers are all the rage, and it's been transformative for me and you and most every individual. And yet at the corporate level, when it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, you don't get that scalable solution that we did through the internet age, right? So if you think about, the .com, now it was a bubble, whatever, all the things, but like
Mhm.
we got scalability, and then everybody went to the www.whatever.com, and it was this consistent where everybody kind of went to the same place, right? Whereas AI and LLMs are a general solution, general tool that create kind of an above average output most of the time. But it's not always the same. It's actually mostly different every single time by design.
Right.
And so how does that scale, right? How do you not just have a bunch of superhumans that have basically pushed the work just down one level?
Yeah. It's interesting, Chris, the contrast and maybe even stepping back from just the introduction of the internet, but software in general was
Yeah.
about letting us hand across work in a predictable way from one
Yep.
party to another,
Yep.
or having a group of people concurrently doing similar work, but capturing and recording their results in a similar way.
Yeah.
And so the fact that AI seeks to create a unique fingerprint with every exchange kind of misses that at the very surface level, right? The generative.
Yeah.
And I plead ignorance on how effectively agentic AI is going to be able to produce the same results with the same inputs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a process by its very nature is supposed to give you some kind of predictable output.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's not a repeatable process, and that is
Yep.
costly. And
For
so
sure.
this is a really interesting question. I do think too, I think about some of the headlines I've been noticing lately, and it's company accidentally spends $500 million in a month on tokens.
Yep.
And I thought, nowhere ever did a company accidentally spend $500 million, unknowingly spend $500 million on labor, you know? Yeah, somebody accidentally backed up a bus of 30,000 people and paid them 1 month's salary in advance. That $500 million, $500 million, like that's a big nut.
Could you imagine like putting HR in charge of token usage?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, and yet that's the conversation around governance that I
Yeah.
think is really front and center. I don't yeah, like any process, I remember working in manufacturing, and they said, well, it's kind of like it's kind of like somebody trying to tune up their car.
Mhm.
And so they think, well, I'll put in better gas. Now I have better fuel, but I don't have enough air. So then I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to, and this is old, 60s hot rodding world, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I'll increase my air intake. Well, now I have a whole bunch of air intake
yeah,
and I
yeah.
have all of this high quality gas, but
Yep,
I'm not getting fast enough sparks, or I'm not
yeah,
getting big enough sparks.
yep.
And so it seems like every process you optimize for portion A and you create portion problems in portion
Oh
B.
yeah, oh
Or you
yeah,
optimize in the middle and now you've created a
yep,
bottleneck in front and behind. And
yeah,
so AI does feel like we haven't figured out where to put it.
yeah,
And maybe this is some of the alarm bell that we're seeing raised by one of the Anthropic founders who's saying maybe we need to, how do we arrive at a collective pause on
mhm,
evolution,
yeah,
which I think is hysterical and frightening in same time, because once the genie's out of the bottle, you
yeah,
can't
yeah,
slow the roll.
yeah.
You know? Um,
Well, and yeah, it definitely is out of the bottle, and it's definitely super useful. And who's paying for it, right? It's not. It's oftentimes it's the corporations that are cutting the check, and
right.
eventually they're going to have to see corporate efficiencies or
Yeah.
corporate value that comes from that, or they'll cut. That's just the name of business.
Yeah. Let me step back. Let's take AI off the table for a second.
Okay,
And
love it.
what is it from a process perspective that typically helps teams work more effectively inside of a process? The AI spikes the issue because everybody's acting as an individual contributor and not part
Yep,
of a cloth.
yep.
But it does make me
Uh,
wonder, the things that make teams more effective may be exactly the use case we're missing here.
I think most teams don't know what the other team members are doing,
Okay. So when we
and
improve
so
visibility, teams work
yeah,
better.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was last week we talked to Peter Weiss, and I was
Yeah.
chatting with him back and forth on LinkedIn this week.
Yeah.
And I was like, so the thing that we talked about was a Gemba, right? And a Gemba is basically you go and you show up and you observe, right? And it's
Right.
really just, it's going to the place, in Toyota, it was going to the manufacturing floor and looking at the floor and just observing what's going on. Why are they doing what they're doing, right?
Mhm.
And the thought really came to me, which was like, can you do that in knowledge work?
Right.
Can you go and observe someone creating a PowerPoint? Can you go and observe someone writing an email? Right. And I think I think it reminds me of me being younger in my career and like being surrounded by these more executive kind of director level people that are like hunting and pecking on their keyboard.
Because
And
they never
just
took typing class.
because they never took typing. I mean, this is
Yeah.
how old we are. But what was interesting about that is you would just I'd be so ultra critical because it's like you don't even know how to use tech, and you'd go into a meeting or you'd find a problem and they could just pick it out, and you're just like they're like magicians over there. Sure, they can't type,
Yeah.
but they could figure it out.
Yeah. That's a great observation, Chris, because one of the best examples or the best analogy I heard for AI is to think of it as a overly confident intern,
Yep,
and a very
for sure.
confident young associate
Yep,
who has a lot of information and has zero applied experience. And
yeah,
I think that's really true. And so, the AI shows up and says, but look, I can type 1,000,000 words a second,
yeah,
and doesn't always understand the context or how to
yeah,
interpret the context. And so it is an interesting, I feel like the overarching issue hasn't been one of we can't code fast enough. I'm sure software companies feel that, but in general, I don't know that anybody said we need to code faster.
yeah,
I think more of it was, how do we reduce feature creep? How do we
yeah,
make interfaces more intuitive?
yeah,
How do I augment my memory with reminders that are
yep,
useful and not just a whole bunch of dinging whiz bangs?
yep.
And to that end, I don't know that AI is as a solution to the problems I had before it splashed,
Yeah, yeah,
on newspaper headlines in, what was that? Probably 24, early
yeah,
to mid
yep.
24, that it started commanding headlines. And so, SpaceX IPOs on Friday,
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
I've watched. There's a guy named Galloway that I
Oh
find
yeah.
really fascinating on social
Prof
media.
G is
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, and one of his comments, having he was chatting with a guest that had grinded through all of their IPO documentation, was just saying, it feels like pie in the sky,
Yeah,
dreaming of things. Um, but here's a perfect example where um, SpaceX is no longer about, a NASA alternative.
yeah,
It's now inclusive of what was once known as Twitter, and
yep.
then build data centers in outer space. Parenthetically, maybe, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's a really weird place where the folks that are closest to it are moving into super speculative spaces,
yep.
this case. And then we have the Anthropic founder on the other hand saying, we need to throw the brakes on this because we
Yeah,
don't know where it's going.
yeah,
And so the I in team, I think, is a really great call out. The individuals that I know
yeah,
that are getting into it are disappearing into all the things that AI can do, but it may not be solving a business problem in the
yeah,
moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that that's the key, right? So like, I can be 10 times more effective as an individual, but how does that translate and or grind against my daily work and the daily team that I'm working and with the clients?
Right. Yeah.
Because there's a bandwidth problem, right? So like when I was working at an e-commerce company, we
Yeah.
were doing 250 million a year, which, that was huge at the time.
Right.
But we always talk about inventory, and there's always this, like, you can have infinite inventory so that you never have stock outs, but your inventory cost goes up,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
You can lower your costs on inventory, but your stock outs go up, right? So you miss sales, right? And so like, I think the whole, there's no I in team, but there's a big I in AI, is that you have a bunch of people that are more efficient, but is the system better?
Mm-hmm.
Are you improving the system, right? Or are you just basically leveraging AI to give yourself the Dunning-Kruger effect so that you're more confident in your specialized expertise that doesn't translate across the silo? And so one of the things that they've seen with coding is that code commits have gone through the roof, but
Yeah.
they've pushed some of those problems down to QA.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's not always the case. And every developer that I've talked about it, they love it because AI can hold more context. And you also have to give AI more additional context because it, like us, even though it can hold more in its pseudo memory, it still has it can hold more context, but it might not hold more business savvy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think about probably one of the ways that so many people are indirectly experiencing AI, and AI bots are following many of us around our digital meetings.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a live meeting and a guy had a pocket device,
Mm-hmm.
and it just said, it's so nice because it takes really good notes and then it
Yep.
distills action items for me. Perfectly logical use
Yep.
in a live in-person meeting.
Yep.
But later that was a conversation before lunch. And then later this afternoon, I was on a panel, and as the panelists were chatting beforehand, she was just saying, a recent study out of MIT said the ability to have recall on work that was done last week is dramatically higher when you individually are performing the work versus using AI. So if I wrote a
Oh yeah. Yeah.
5-page paper,
Yep.
or I wrote 5 emails myself versus having
Yep.
AI assisted stuff, I'm just not as engaged in the work. And so right now I feel like it's promoting a degree of almost fantasy like exploration, but
Yeah.
it's also costing us a lot of attention in the moment because it's just a really nice
Yeah.
crutch.
Yeah.
I can look for the answers,
Yeah.
or I can revisit this call at any
Yeah.
time. It's been captured and it's accessible.
Yep. The,
And so even the
the,
I in some ways feels diminished
mhm.
from where our basic blocking and tackling,
Yeah.
been collectively.
Yeah. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. The other problem is the I can do more, or there's a perception that they can do more.
Yeah.
And so therefore they take on more. And we don't know, we don't know how the game is going to end here because we're right in the
Right.
middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like stay tuned. We'll see how this lands. I do think about you and I had talked about just prior to the getting on the podcast about an example where we have a collaborator
Oh, yeah.
that's operating in a coordination and kind of headwaters as our
Yep.
project manager. She's most actively involved in one of our initiatives.
Yep.
He's convening and facilitating, but also kind of running the outputs of this work group through a common model that she uses AI for.
Yeah, it's a really good way that AI is being leveraged because we're taking her specialized knowledge with the specialized output that took months and months and months and months to create, or weeks to create.
Yeah.
And she's compressed that into days. And
It's
then
amazing. Yeah.
and then we are able to then go and use that to promote stuff like our process debt, or promote our podcast, or tell stories, and we're using it in a social manner, and we're probably not alone. Well, I say no, we're not alone, but it is a good use in which you take that specialized knowledge, and it would be fine for her, but she can actually get that exponential impact by sharing that expertise with us.
Yeah. I know you use it for a lot of our post-production link after recordings.
Yep. For sure.
For which I'm super grateful, because otherwise I'm just feeling guilty about, God, Chris is doing all the heavy lifting. But it is kind of interesting. For my own part, I've discovered that I enjoy being more of an author than an editor.
Mm-hmm.
And the world of AI is about being an editor.
Yeah.
And so it's a different kind of muscle. It's a different kind of attention that we need to bring to bear.
For sure.
I was using it recently to help organize some different thoughts and resources into a cohesive 3-part series.
Sure.
And what I discovered was that while the broad brushstroke looked good and it was aligned to the content I already had in hand, it was making a new logic of it. It was also citing fictional resources that didn't exist. It might be a real author and they may have written on this topic, but it's citing books for my reference that simply didn't exist. And I thought, this isn't the early days of GPT. This was Claude, 4 weeks ago. And so there's still some gaps, and all of a sudden to be not just an editor, but to be to feel like I have to fact check something that shows up and presents things as actual is a little tricky. And so flavors of adoption vary widely. And it's a really nice rough cut, It's like using an electric chisel, and if what I want to do is build a new marble sculpture of David, I could probably rough cut the general outline with today's modern equipment, but all that fine grain shaping of marble is still got to be done, probably by hand, just as artisans did 1,000 years ago.
Well, I do think that there's the company and or teams that leverage AI and basically empower people to leverage the AI and to translate or transfer that knowledge, whether it's through prompts or whatever. They're gonna be great. Like, because the reality is, like, we're better off with it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, right? Like now maybe we are not when we finally come down from the, when Icarus has flown too close to the sun and has fallen down, because we realize there's a real cost here. And so
Yeah.
that reckoning will come at us, and we will figure a way around it, either by creating GPTs that live on our computer and they're just slower and we have to be patient or something. But the key is we're better, but we are not, we are individually exponentially better, but I don't think corporately or systematically we haven't figured out that way around it.
Yeah. I think we want to make it this magical panacea that solves everything.
Yeah.
The same way that I remember when cordless, it wasn't, I don't think Ryobi was the first, but they were one of the early
Yep.
equipment. And all of a sudden they're flying off the shelves at Lowe's and Home Depot. And many of us just needed a screwdriver. We didn't even need an electric, screwdriver, but it was the hot new thing.
Yep.
And so I'm sure, like many others, I have some zombie, battery equipment that I probably can't even find new batteries for anymore.
Oh, for sure.
And so a little bit of it is a solution in search of a use case. This one is just a lot more powerful than battery powered drills and handheld tools.
Yeah, and we'll leave it here. I did see a post on someone saying that AI is kind of like the doorman problem, where it's like these really nice hotels, they have doormen. You don't really understand why. You don't understand what they're doing. And really, they're acting as a customer service agent, right? They're making people feel welcome. They're acting as security. There's a lot of different reasons why they are important, right?
Right.
And that's kind of where AI, it's like, look, we need humans in the loop here. And then the other thing in this post that they said was that we think AI should be able to solve other people's problems super easy, because we're like, their job's easy, but ours is a little bit more bespoke and it takes a little bit more human effort. And I just thought that's kind of a perfect way to wrap this up, of like, no one's figured this out. And so what I would encourage, the Process Debt podcast listeners is to figure out a way to share how you're using AI more and more and more, because it's when we figure out the ways that we're, mutually using it, that's when you can get more leverage, because you have more people using it in a similar way.
Well said, Chris.
Cool. Catch you next week, man.
Sir.
All right.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.